So, what is reception theory? So, reception theory is the way audiences interpret specific scenes in movies or things like words in writing um, to where they eventually have a specific theory or an opinion about the matter. So, some examples of this might be in Lion King, Simba goes back to Pride Rock after getting kicked out to go see his family. What this is and does is it symbolizes the where we're supposed to embrace our destiny, and a lot of audiences interpret that scene that way. Another scene that is like that as well is when Harry Potter goes to wizard school for the first time at Hogwarts, and he's put into a house of wizardry, which is Gryffindor, instead of Slytherin, even though he was supposed to and meant to go to Slytherin, which is supposed to be more kind of a the more dark and evil wizards. What it does is it shows that, even if there's a lot of good in you, you can embrace the good, even though there might be evil, and still be able to overcome that evil and do good for many people. A lot of people embrace that in that scene. So there are actually two things with reception theory, which is decoding and encoding. So decoding is the way that audiences interpret a specific scene, and encoding is the message the artist is trying to convey to the audience. There's three different types of the way people react to reception theory. And this is negotiated, dominant, and oppositional. So negotiated is when people are typically indifferent about a specific scene. They don't have really an opinion on the matter. Oppositional is when people absolutely despise or disagree with what is going on in the writing or within the scene. And then dominant is people who completely agree with the message that is trying to be conveyed. And the scene I'm going to be talking a little bit about is the scene wherein Zuko betrays his uncle out in Ba Sing Se in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I have recently interviewed three people that are pretty close to me, but all very different backgrounds. Their names are Ben, Marina, and Justin. So Ben, he's over 30 years old. He's a big history buff. He loves TV shows, movies. Justin, he is going to be a firefighter. He's in his low 20s. He's a really hard worker, and he loves to go hunting and fishing. And Marina, she is my wife. She's 25. She's a stay-at-home mom, and she loves to bake and make bread, homemade bread. And so I interviewed these three with specific questions on reception theory and kind of how they took this specific scene of Zuko betraying his uncle Iroh, and two of them have seen the TV series, and one of them hadn't, and the one was my brother Justin, who hadn't yet. And I'll start off with him. He was completely dominant on the subject. He felt what Zuko had done was completely wrong and that it was completely unjustified. Zuko's actions were, as he liked to put it, just weak, is what he liked to call it, and with not sticking with his uncle. And then I interviewed my wife Marina, and she was also dominant as well on the matter. She actually didn't want to watch the TV series with me about 2 years ago, and we did, and she loved it. Right, but I asked her these 5 questions about that specific scene with Zuko betraying his uncle to capture the Avatar, and I kind of knew how she was going to feel. She felt pretty dominant on the subject, just like Justin did as well. She did not like how he would betray Uncle Iroh because of how loving and kind he was to Zuko always, and for Zuko to then betray him and try to capture the Avatar with his sister, who never showed love or compassion towards him, and to then try to make his father happy, who also never believed in Zuko or showed any love towards Zuko. She just didn't think that it was right, and also felt unjustified as well, that he had betrayed his uncle to go be with those people who weren't loving or compassionate towards him. And that's why she felt so strongly about it. And then I interviewed my brother Ben. Who's that big history buff, he's also seen the TV series, and he actually loves the TV series, and he actually feels a little indifferent about it. He had a negotiated perspective about the matter. He says what Zuko had done was wrong, but he also understood how complex that situation was for Zuko, because he was already trying to battle out if he wanted to no longer try to capture the Avatar and just live a normal and simple life, or try to capture the Avatar to please his father. It wasn't really like his desire to do that. The only reason why it was desired of Zuko is because his father had put that desire upon him, that destiny, if you will. And that's what Ben had said. And so he said, I feel indifferent about it. I don't like that he had betrayed Uncle Iroh, but he also understood why it had happened. And those are some of the reasons why they felt the way that they did in those interviews that I had conducted with those 5 questions that I ended up asking them. So these interviews actually did not turn out how I had expected, at least for my brother Ben. I did expect my wife, because I'd watched that scene and that show with her, to be on the more dominant side. Justin as well, because he hadn't really seen it. So of course him betraying his uncle, would make anyone kind of feel, like that was not okay. And so, but one thing that I did end up learning was my brother Ben. I thought he was going to actually have, you could say, an oppositional side to it rather than a negotiated, just because, he understood why Zuko, made those actions, because I'm on the more negotiated side myself when it comes to this. But my brother Ben is very opinionated person, and I know he also hated that Zuko did end up betraying his uncle. But I think it's because of it's been like 15 years since that scene has come out, and after interviewing my brother, being able to see kind of more of a different perspective now that he's a father and everything, kind of being a little bit more understanding on what position Zuko was in. And so I thought that was very interesting, and something that I was able to learn from his perspective was, that people can be going through really tough and hard things, and we don't really know what they're going through. And even though we might expect them to make the right choice, which in this case would have been to actually protect the Avatar, then betray his uncle and try to capture him, sometimes we might make the wrong choices, but there is always forgiveness in the end, which is great, which is what the story ends up being towards the end with his uncle, with Zuko and his uncle.